I've always lived under a rule so sacred, it felt stitched into the walls of our home. No romantic relationships under this roof. My father didn't just speak the rule, he lived it. After my mother passed away when I was 10, he became both our shelter and our shadow, guarding my younger sister Lily and me with quiet intensity. His love was real, but it came wrapped in fear of heartbreak, dishonor, and the chaos of emotions left unchecked. He never said it with anger, only certainty. Nothing good comes from sneaking around. In this house, love waits until the time is right. I believed him. For the longest time, I really did. At 18, I was the image of what a dutiful daughter should be, focused on my studies, polite to a fault, and emotionally disciplined. I didn't crave rebellion. I craved security. But sometimes, it's not rebellion that breaks you. Sometimes it's the quiet pull of something you didn't see coming. It started with a knock at the door on a rainy afternoon. Daniel. I hadn't seen him in years, not since his family moved out of town when we were kids. Now taller, broader, and undeniably confident, Daniel had returned to care for his ailing grandmother who lived 2 houses down. His smile was the same, though, half mischievous, half sincere. It caught me off guard. Our reintroduction was simple. He offered to help carry our groceries inside, claiming he owed the neighborhood some kindness. Dad nodded in approval, and Lily beamed. She remembered him too. Daniel and I exchanged brief words, just enough to spark a quiet curiosity inside me. Over the next few weeks, we crossed paths often. The local library, the park, even the small market where I bought vegetables every Saturday. He always seemed to be where I was. We'd talk about books, about school, about anything. That wasn't personal. But every word added a thread between us, and I could feel it tightening. He was different from other boys, thoughtful without being dull, humorous without arrogance. And he listened, really listened. Not just to what I said, but to what I meant. That made him dangerous. One evening, as I studied alone at the library, Daniel sat across from me. "Still the smartest girl in the room," he teased. I laughed softly. "Still the smoothest talker in the neighborhood," I replied. Our conversation drifted to family. I mentioned the rule, briefly, almost like a joke. But Daniel didn't laugh. He looked at me for a long second and said, "Some rules are there to protect us. Others just keep us from living." That night, I couldn't sleep. His words echoed louder than they should have. For the first time, the rule that once felt like armor began to feel like a wall. And that's where the story truly begins, with a girl who believed in rules and a boy who made her question everything. To be continued. It started innocently enough. Texts about homework, occasional chats at the library. But Daniel had a way of making ordinary moments feel laced with meaning. When he looked at me, it felt like he was reading past the surface, straight into the parts of me I never shared aloud. I told myself we were just reconnecting. Friends, nothing more. But late at night, when the house was still and my phone lit up with his name, I knew I was lying. Daniel made it easy. He never pressured me, never crossed the lines I was too scared to admit existed. But he lingered just long enough to stir what I was trying to keep buried. We began meeting quietly. Study sessions at the library became weekly rituals. Walks to the market grew longer. A coffee shop 2 blocks away became our unofficial haven. Always in public. Always casual. Always careful. At home, I kept up the image. Dutiful daughter. Protective older sister. But Lily, ever observant, had begun watching me with narrowed eyes. She wasn't confrontational, but I could feel her quiet judgment every time she caught me smiling at a text. One afternoon, while I was fixing my hair in the hallway mirror, she asked without looking up from her book, "Is Daniel just a friend?" I froze, heartbeat stuttering. "Of course. Why would you ask that?" She shrugged, flipping a page. "You only smile like that when you're thinking about someone who could break the rules." I laughed it off, but her words stuck. Lily was young, but she understood more than I gave her credit for. Still, I kept seeing Daniel. Not because I wanted to disobey my father, but because I couldn't ignore how alive I felt around him. With him, I wasn't just the careful daughter. I was Ava, curious, daring, real. The turning point came one Sunday afternoon. My father had taken Lily to visit relatives, and I was home alone. Daniel dropped by unannounced with a book I been wanting to read. He stood at the doorway, hesitant. "I shouldn't stay," he said. "I know," I replied. But neither of us moved. I let him in. We didn't do anything outrageous, just sat on the couch, talked about music, shared memories from childhood. But as the afternoon sun dipped lower, something changed. When he leaned in and kissed me, it wasn't wild or rushed. It was soft, certain, and terrifying. I kissed him back. When he left, silence returned to the house. But it felt different. Now, heavier, charged. I had crossed a line I'd sworn never to touch. And the worst part? I didn't regret it. Not yet. But deep down, I knew this story wasn't going to stay simple for long. To be continued. For a brief time, I lived in two worlds. In one, I was the daughter who obeyed, who laughed at dinner, who helped Lily with her school projects. In the other, I was a girl in love, hidden, breathless, reckless. But secrets don't stay hidden forever. Lily grew colder. She stopped asking questions and started watching instead. Her silences were louder than any confrontation. Then, one evening, while I was texting Daniel from the hallway, she appeared behind me. "Dad doesn't deserve this," she whispered. My fingers froze above the screen. "Lily," she raised a hand. "I haven't told him, but I will, if this doesn't stop." I begged her for time. I swore it wasn't serious. I promised I'd talk to Daniel, that I'd do the right thing. And I meant it, at least in that moment. The next day, I sent Daniel a message asking to meet. He didn't reply. I tried again. Nothing. Days passed. Silence. My worry turned to dread. I called once, straight to voicemail. He had never ignored me like this. Then, in a moment that felt both surreal and cruel, I found out the truth. Not from him, but from someone else entirely. Sophia, my closest friend from college, called me, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Guess what? I'm dating someone. Daniel, you remember him, right? We met at that coffee shop a while back." Her words hit like glass shattering inside my chest. I couldn't speak. I could barely breathe. Daniel wasn't just avoiding me. He had been two-timing us, playing a game with hearts he had no intention of keeping. That kiss, those conversations, the stolen moments, they were never his promises. They were just experiments. I felt sick, humiliated, betrayed. But more than anything, I felt stupid. I had broken the one rule that mattered most in our home, for someone who never took me seriously. I confronted him, needing closure. He didn't deny it. His voice was calm, almost bored. "I liked you," he said. "But I didn't think you'd take it so seriously. You knew the risks." The cruelty in his indifference cut deeper than any lie. I left without another word. Back home, I sat, in silence, the weight of my choices pressing against my chest like a stone. I didn't tell Lily what happened. I didn't tell my father. The shame was mine to carry, and I wasn't ready to let anyone else bear it. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, tears spilling into my pillow. I had broken the rule. I had lost Daniel, and somehow I was the one left holding all the broken pieces. But even then, I knew. This wasn't the end. Some truths can't stay hidden forever. To be continued. The days that followed were steeped in quiet. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy, loaded kind that settled over everything like a storm cloud refusing to break. I walked through the house like a shadow of myself, silent, alert, constantly bracing for the moment the truth would surface. But it never did. Lily never spoke of Daniel again. Her eyes met mine once with a sharpness that said she knew everything, even what I wasn't saying. But she kept her promise. She didn't tell Dad, and I didn't ask her why. Maybe she pitied me, Maybe she simply knew some pain had to be carried alone. I thought about confessing, about coming clean to my father and accepting whatever consequences came. But every time I imagined the disappointment in his eyes, the silence that would follow, I swallowed the truth all over again. I had already broken the rule. Did admitting it now undo the betrayal, or just deepen the wound? So, I buried it. Buried Daniel. Buried the version of me that thought love could be worth risking everything for. But grief has a strange way of transforming us. I began helping my father more around the house. Not out of guilt, but out of gratitude. Gratitude for the quiet love he'd given me all these years without asking for anything in return. The man who guarded our home with strict rules wasn't cruel. He was scared. Scared that what happened to Mom would happen to us. That love, when mishandled, would leave another hole in our family too wide to fill. In that understanding, I found forgiveness, not just for him, but for myself. Weeks passed. The pain dulled. My heart, though bruised, began to beat a little stronger. I focused on school, on Lily, on being present in my life again without letting the shadows of what had happened haunt every step. There were nights I still thought about Daniel. Not with longing, but with the kind of clarity that only comes after betrayal. He was never mine to begin with. I learned to live with the silence, to accept that some stories don't need to be told to everyone to still matter. Some truths, when exposed, only fracture more than they fix. And so I chose to keep it hidden, not out of fear, but because I had already paid the price. I didn't need punishment. I needed peace. And I found it, in small places, in the smell of coffee on quiet mornings, in Lily's laughter returning, in my father's hand resting briefly on my shoulder at dinner, as if to say he still trusted me, even if he didn't know everything. No, I wasn't the same girl who once believed rules kept you safe from heartbreak. But I was someone new. Someone who knew that sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones you carry in silence.